People don't care what you know until they know that you care. You don't have to copy somebody's way of leading. So the advice that I got from that leader was really lead from your values, right? So that you feel more complete. You don't feel like you're two different people.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Next Phase podcast. Today, we are having Alex as the guest. Alex is the leadership coach and engineer who helps technical professionals transition from specialist roles into confident leaders, particularly in multicultural environments. After working as executive director and chief of staff in the government of Alberta and vice president of people and talent for a global tech for good firm across Africa, Europe, and North America, Alex became fascinated by how leadership expectations change across cultures. Today, he works with engineers, consultants, and technical experts to help them communicate clearly, give effective feedback, and lead diverse teams successfully. Thank you very much, Alex, for joining us today.
Thank you, Ade.
I know I've read a little bit about your bio. Can you also tell us about yourself, about your experience?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. It's great to be here. So I was born and raised in Nigeria. I'm a proud Nigerian. I studied mechanical engineering for my first degree in Nigeria, and then I moved to Canada to do a master's degree also in engineering. So my first job out of school was with the province of Alberta. I worked as an engineer for the Alberta Department of Energy, and I was doing technical work, so kind of like as you described. But quite early in my career, I had the opportunity to manage other engineers. So that was my journey really into leadership. That gave me a bit of a taste, and then from there, I started managing people where I didn't know as much of the subject matter. But I've learned a lot really in my journey as a leader, and I've become really fascinated with leadership as a topic.
Okay, that is very good. And you said something that in your role you were managing some other engineers. So at what point did you start thinking about leadership? I know sometimes we might be in the position where we'll lead some people, but we might not really think about leadership. We just feel that maybe we are just doing our job. But at what point did you start thinking about leadership as the next step in your career?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So the main inflection point for me, because I was fortunate, like I said, to start managing people who used to be my peers. But at that time, I was a subject matter expert, so I knew the work that they were doing inside out. But then shortly after, a senior official came to our division in the provincial government. In fact, he was in the Canadian Army before, and he moved to come and work with the provincial government. So he didn't really know the topics as well, but he wanted me to be his EA. I ultimately became his chief of staff. So that was when I started asking myself, like, this seems like a different kind of work where I'm having to influence, I'm having to shape people's thinking, I'm having to motivate people. So that's when it began to set in my mind that maybe I could make a career out of this.
There's a little shift from being somebody that is technical, like being an engineer, now taking leadership position. How was that transition for you? Was it very easy? Does it require you getting some certification, getting some training? How was it like for you?
It's a really good question, Ade, because yes, I had the opportunity to get training and exposure. Like the government of Alberta is very good at developing people, so you go for leadership development training. But for me, the biggest transition was actually more psychological, because the way I used to spend my time when I was an engineer, the way I used to spend my hours is either reviewing something, analyzing something, researching something, observing something, calculating something. But the way I was spending my time as a leader was a lot of human conversations, chatting with people, trying to understand what drives them, what motivates them, try to understand what success looks like for them. So it was very strange at first. I felt like, is this really a job that I'm doing here? Because I happen to be one of these people who I love chatting, I love talking, I love connecting with people, but it no longer seemed like work the way I used to define it. So one of the things that was helpful for me, and I think it would be helpful for others that are making that transition, is to be able to normalize the fact that work will look different when you move from being a specialist with your head down looking at the details, being responsible for delivering things versus when you're now responsible for guiding people, influencing people, motivating people, even just simply dealing with problems that they may have, right? So the biggest transition for me was more psychological.
I like that. And during those transition, did you ever feel any maybe self doubt or imposter syndrome, thinking that will I be able to do this or not?
Yeah, it's a good question. I tend to be a confident person, but because it felt so different, I was
Mm.
like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Like, is this really work? Those were the things that kept coming to my mind. So this was back in the day. I don't even know if we had started using terms like imposter syndrome, but I definitely was scratching my head. Like when I would spend my 8 hours when I was an engineer, it was easier for me to say tangibly, this is what I achieved. I moved this project from point A to point B. Maybe by tomorrow, I'll move it to point C and then I'll be done by such and such a time. But when you're trying to connect with people, when you're trying to see what drives people, it's a bit more of a longer play. So it was harder to measure success. So those were some of the things that it was really helpful for me to have people walking alongside me just to give me guidance to understand that this is the kind of impact you can have. Because again, working as a specialist, you definitely have impact, but perhaps it's easier for you to see the impact in the short term. Whereas some of these big leadership roles, like in that specific case, I was working with this guy, this is my former boss. He came in and he was leading our division that had about 40 people. And then not long after, he moved to another job in the government where he was responsible for leading 3,000 people. And he asked
Mm.
me to come with him. So the scope became even bigger. So again, I was like, like I'm going around building relationships, getting to know people, kind of clarifying some of his intent. And it just felt so different to me. So, yeah, your point around self doubt, it's useful to have thought partners that you can bounce something off and say, hey, I'm feeling a little bit unusual. Like I'm feeling confused. What do I need to do to make myself feel more comfortable? And that really helped me along the way.
Yeah, and those thought partners can be maybe coaches, mentors, or just it might even be peers or somebody in a higher position than you. And
That's
for your case, you said it was your boss.
that's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
right. I think, they say it takes a village, and I think it really applies to your career as well. It's something that I'll say to anybody. However you're feeling in your career, whether you're having high highs or low lows, find people that are like-minded or people that have been in the similar position or a position that you want to be in, and have conversations with them and talk not just about the technical aspect, talk about how they felt when they were in these positions. I think it can be quite helpful.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. You mentioned that you like having conversation with people. When you meet people, you want to have a conversation with them. And you started your role with having to manage people that were your peers. So at that point, how did you give feedback to them? What approach did you use to give feedback to them so that it won't like be like, oh, we are peers. How can you be telling me to do this? How can you be telling me to do that? What approach did you use when you were giving feedback to people working with you then?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Ade. And feedback, I think, is one of the most critical it's one of the most critical pieces when it comes to being a leader. So the first thing, of course, I encourage people is to be authentic. You have to be true to yourself. But in terms of giving feedback, especially to people who have been peers, try and give the feedback early. So if something happens today, don't wait till 6 months from now and say, oh, there was this thing that happened 6 months ago. Talk about it as soon as you can. If it's constructive feedback, do it in private, because human beings, we're social animals. We want to belong. So if you see something negative or something that needs to be constructive, don't bring that up in the team where everybody is. If you're going to praise somebody, by all means, praise them in public. But if you're going to give something constructive, give it in private. A couple more things around giving feedback is I always assumed a positive intent. So I would say, this is what I observed. Tell me what happened, right? Help me understand what happened. I think that can be really helpful. So there are a number of these things when it comes to giving feedback that can be quite powerful. The final thing that I'll say is tell people why it's important. Like, hey, Ade, I need to talk about this with you, and I raised this because of this. Don't just say, well, in that meeting, You rolled your eyes at that person and I didn't like it. Explain why that's important. You rolled your eyes at that person. Perhaps that may make the person feel like we're disrespecting them, or that may make us less effective in the work
Yeah.
that we're doing with them as a team. So those are some of the things that I found helpful. Help people understand that Alex actually cares about my success, cares about our success. So he's not just telling me these things because he's now the boss. So those are some of the techniques that I try to apply.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Did you ever experience maybe pullback? Maybe you try to give somebody a difficult feedback and the relationship change immediately. Did you ever?
I've been fortunate, like in that particular team, that wasn't the case. But sometimes it happens, right? You try to give difficult feedback, and people pull back. But one of the things that I do, even at the outset of taking on a leadership role, is I try to set the conditions early. So I try to tell people, look, hey, we're a team. We win together. We also lose together, right? So there's that collective feeling. So I try to make sure that people don't feel like you're hanging them out to dry, that they're being exposed. But because human beings are different, there are times when somebody will be like, I thought me and Alex were cool. What's going on? Why is Alex giving me this kind of feedback? Consistency is helpful. If people see that you're fair, if people see that the same kind of behavior, if it happens across the board, you're going to take the same approach, that can help. And just being as honest as possible with people, saying, look, here's why I'm saying this for our collective success. And I think that can be quite helpful.
Yeah, I really like that approach because if you've already set the stage for people to know that this is how we are going to be working together, it's not like you are setting new rules just because you want to give feedback.
That's
So
right.
you can easily relate the feedback to, oh, we discussed about this sometimes ago. This is what is happening. But if we are setting new rules at the point of giving feedback, then it's people don't take it easily and lightly like that. Yeah,
That's
I
right.
like that approach. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. You were talking about like mentorship, your boss that you saw how his leadership style and you learned a lot from him. And I'm so sure that he is not the only one that you have received advice from or gone under mentorship or coaching with. So what advice have you ever received that changed your leadership approach or leadership style?
Yeah. So that's a really good question, because for me, like I told you, I like relationship, I like connection with people. So I don't like making people feel bad. So
Mm,
I was in this space where I was wondering what's the best way to give difficult feedback. And I spoke to someone. So this person was a deputy minister of another ministry. And I was just chatting with him, invited me into his office for a chat. And again, those kind of influences really helped me in my journey. But I shared with him that one of my struggles is giving difficult feedback because I don't want to hurt people. I don't want people to feel bad. And he gave me this framework that was really important. He said, Alex, what's something that is important to you? He knew that I had a family, right? My kids were much younger then, but he knew I was a family man. So he said, Alex, I know your family is important to you. Think about the feedback that you're about to give to this person. And think about if you went home and told your wife, told your kids, this is what I said to these people or to this person, how would you feel? Would you feel proud sharing? That helped me because essentially what it did was it connected to my values. And I think this is really important for leaders because sometimes leaders think I have to just copy paste a way of giving feedback. But what I learned from that advice was it has to resonate with your own values. So if you're the kind of person who wants to be respectful in every interaction, there's still a way to pass that message and remain respectful if that's something that is important to you. If you're somebody who wants to be kind, you can still give that clear feedback so that the person understands what needs to happen and remain kind. So you don't want to become a different person. I remember I was managing someone and she also was a manager. And she told me once, like, Alex, I find myself being very bossy with my team, but that's not how I want to be. So I asked her, okay, if you don't want to be like that, why are you being like that? She said, well, that's what I observed. I observed that this is how leaders behave. So I feel that I have to be that way, but it's not natural for me. So the conversation we had is what's natural for you? Like when you're working, even in your personal life at home, with maybe you're volunteering in your community with your kids' soccer or something, how do you influence people? And she said, I influence people like this, like that. It's like, okay, you can bring that to work as well. You don't have to copy somebody's way of leading. So the advice that I got from that leader was really lead from your values, right? So that you feel more complete. You don't feel like you're two different people. So that was really helpful for me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. As you were answering that question, something was just going on in my mind that um when you are giving feedback, let's say for example you have 5 people on your team,
Yeah.
do you use the same communication style to give feedback to the 5 people, or you take into consideration their own personality too? What do you do?
A very good question. Because of the way I'm wired, I take into account people's personality, not just their personality, their story. So I'll give you an example. I mean, a lot of people that I was leading in my roles, they've been family people, maybe a woman with a young child, and then some other people, they may be very young, they may be single, so their life is different, right? So often when I'm having one-on-ones with them, first of all, it's not just about feedback. I want to know how people are doing. How's the last week been? What's been going well? What's not been going well? So because of that, I can get the context of what that person needs. So that's one, understanding what's happening in people's lives. Some people, maybe they just had a bad night last night. They didn't sleep well. So when they come in and maybe things are not very easy for them, you know where it's coming from. But there's some people who they don't like stories. They don't like descriptions. They just want you to tell them, hey, this is where we're going and this is my part in it. Let's go. Some people are like that. Other people, they need to know, why is this thing important? Why are we taking this step, and why are we taking this step now? So for those people, to be more effective in communicating with them, you have to give them wider context. Maybe you're the boss, you go and sit in some other meeting somewhere and come back. There's some people who really, really want to know, and there are other people who they don't want to know as much. So those are some of the things that you adjust. But of course, things like being open, being transparent, making sure you don't sugarcoat. You want to be consistent there, but the approach, definitely you can customize. I find myself customizing based on the person's circumstances, what the person is trying to achieve, even at that phase in their career.
Thank you for sharing that. I know in Canada, when we are giving feedback, we are mostly indirect when giving feedback. But sometimes some feedback might need you to be able to be direct. So, as a leader, how can someone balance being direct or indirect, but still be able to maintain the trust of their team and also the psychological safety? You were talking about um, your leadership start taking into consideration psychological safety to in the way you deal with people. So how can leaders balance that? You want to give direct feedback or whatever, direct or indirect, but you still want your people to trust you and you still want your team to feel safe with you. How do you balance that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's a saying that I heard someone, they said that people don't care what you know until they know that you care. So one of the things that I do in terms of making sure there's psychological safety in advance of the feedback moment is, I like to get to know people. I like to know, what's happening in their family units, you know. Some of us, when we come to Canada, and people ask you at the office, like, hey, how's your weekend? Some of us might find it a little bit strange, but I found that really powerful, just to get to know what's happening in people's lives. Some people, they have a partner, some people they have a dog, some people they have children, some people they go hiking in the mountains, some people they volunteer in their community. So I invest early in letting people know that Alex cares about me, but not just that Alex cares about me as a person. Alex also cares about my career growth. Say someone is looking for me, they're an accountant, they're an engineer, they're a writer. I have conversations with them often. Like, where do you want to go? Maybe I want to learn AI. I
Yeah.
want to learn this, I want to learn that. I want to be on this kind of a project. Try to, where I can, right, feed those needs so people know, okay, this person cares about my progress.
My growth, yeah.
So if that person cares about my growth, there's a bigger chance that if the person is giving me feedback, they must be doing this to get to my growth. But the and there's a lot of work now, even in Canada, this idea of say something positive, then say something negative, then say something in between. People have people have
Sandwich.
yeah, people have started moving away from that sound because it doesn't give the clarity. It doesn't give the clarity. that people need. I know why people were doing it. They were doing it because they want people to feel comfortable. I think for me, having a language around something is usually very powerful. There's this book, it's called Radical Candor. I think it's by Kim Scott, and she talks about candor is actually kind, because if I want to be nice to someone and I don't tell them something that they need to change, I'm actually not being kind to them. And
Yeah.
the way my brain works, that actually helped me say, okay, I may think I'm trying to protect this person, but if I don't tell them what they need to hear, I'm actually not being kind to them. So that way of thinking kind of opened up my mind, where I'm like, it's better for me to say this thing to them because they're human. You can't guarantee that they're going to take it well.
Yeah.
Trust is good, but that's true kindness for them to know. Here's what's needed to be successful in this environment. So that's what I would say in response to that question.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I remember you were saying something about someone asking you about your weekend. I remember earlier on, like when I just came to Canada, I make sure I plan my story
Yeah,
that I will do on Monday
that's
because I don't want to be caught unawares. I remember
yes,
there was a particular weekend I did a lot of things that weekend, and I know the next weekend I'm not going to do anything, so I had to break the story into two so that I have what to share for 2 weeks. So yeah, but now I just it flows. I don't need to think about it. I know that every day when I meet colleagues, when I talk to them, I have something to say because I actually did something over the weekend. Yeah. So having that human connection is really good.
yeah. And on that, it's one of the things that I've been seeing a lot in my work, because people are skillful in every environment. There are people from all over the world with different skills. But when you move from one environment to another, you may just need to kind of open your mind to another way of working, just like you described. So even this simple story you told is very powerful. I know people like us who are immigrants to Canada, or we might not even be an immigrant, but you're leading a multicultural team,
Mm.
kind of open your eyes to the people around you and just adapting different tools. It's almost like you're a carpenter and you have different tools in your toolbox that you can pick from to use. I think it makes you a more successful professional when you're able to adapt to different environments. So that's a good example.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We've talked a lot about immigrants, immigration, multicultural environment. So let's talk a little more about immigrant journey now. What unique challenges do you think immigrants professional face when stepping into leadership roles?
Yeah, it's a really good question, right? And I'm thinking of people like us who come from the global south. Of course, we know that not every single country is the same, so we don't want to
Yeah,
make big generalizations, but in general, a lot of times, even the way we're educated in the global south, it's very focused on delivering something. you know it's not about just telling stories and connecting. That's generally the experience. I know some people have different experiences, but when we come to like a different environment in the West, um, the line between work and life is a little bit more blurred. Like people want to know you, people want to connect with you in a different way. So again, we don't have to become completely different people, but being open. I like to describe it as a fluency, right? Being fluent in a different way of operating. So you're still going to be yourself, and it's not like the way we behave in the global south is worse than the way they behave in the West. But it's just like almost learning a new language,
yeah,
learning new operating systems. Those are some of the things. Is when you're an expert in, I know in Nigeria, for example, somebody will say, my name is Architect Alex or Engineer Alex, and they carry that name all through their career. Like even if they
yeah,
become a politician, still consider themselves, even if they become a pastor, they still call themselves architect. So sometimes we tend to build our identity around that first education or that first specialty. And that's useful because the skills you learn in that environment are going to be useful. But just being able to think about yourself a little bit differently. Yes, I'm an engineer, I have an engineering background, but now I'm a leader. Now I'm a public speaker. Now I'm a teacher. Now I'm a community leader. So that's something that I think can be very helpful when we move into these spaces. But of course, communication is a really powerful thing that we have to adapt when we come as a specialist, and now we're coming into leadership. We have to be able to set parameters. We have to be able to co-create, right? In in Africa, for example, again, I know I'm generalizing. Sometimes the role of a boss, and I know it's changing now, but sometimes the role of a boss was always to tell other people what to do. But here, leadership is a lot more democratic. Not always, not in every environment, but coming in and listening to the people around you and getting that. Here, bosses are very comfortable saying, I don't know. Tell me what you think. Whereas some of us, where we're coming from, that's not how we've been trained. We've been trained that you're the boss, you have to have answers, right? So those are just some little tweaks. It's not a complete 360, but just some little tweaks that can help you be more fluent. For me, for example, if I come into a new role, in a leadership role now, in any environment in the world, I'll connect quickly with the people that have been there before me and just ask them what's going well in this environment, what's not going well. And that can be really useful insight for you instead of saying, hey, I'm the expert, I have this job, I'm the boss, I'm going to come in and I'm going to dictate exactly what people are going to do. So, those are some of the things that I think are relevant for us who have come from elsewhere, or we're dealing in a multicultural environment, and we're moving from being a specialist, being the expert, being the one who knows everything, to being a leader.
Yeah.
You have to take something from the people on your team and then build and then chart the course forward.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. You have answered the next question I have in mind. I was going to ask, how what advice will you give immigrants that maybe they go into leadership roles and they are just focused on proving themselves? But to talk more about, first of all, when you get into a new place, start to know the people, try to have those communications, see how things are going before you start making changes. But some people, they just get there, they want to prove that, yes, I'm here for a reason. Fine, we know that you are here we are here for a reason, but you have to still connect with people around. Do you have any more advice regarding that?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. One of the things that I like to say to people, even when they are going into an interview or they're trying to talk, hey, I want to be the leader, I aspire to be the leader of this team. You have to ask yourself, what are they looking for from you? The people who are hiring, they're looking for from you. Sometimes we think they're looking for you to have all the answers or to hold the pen on everything. But actually,
Mm.
it's you to go in there, be able to inspire people, be able to lead people, be able to bring people together. So that's your job, right? So understanding that that's your job, going in there, even if you have the best answers every day, every day, every day, that's not what you've been brought there for. You've been brought there to bring the best out of that group, to make that group excel. So even where you place your identity as a leader, I think is very important. Like what does winning look like for you as a leader? If winning about I have all the answers, I have all the answers, I have all the answers, if maybe you have a team of 5 people, you're actually going to slow that team down because everybody is going to have to wait for you to give them the answer. But if you
Yeah.
can develop that team to the point where they have enough context, they have enough information to go out there and shine, then you're actually creating more leaders. So I think that's something that I invite people, leaders in every environment, to think about. Like, your job is not actually to have all the answers, because if it is, you become the bottleneck. Everybody is waiting for you to give that answer. You can't be in 10 places at once. So if you can
Yeah.
create more leaders, then that's a better recipe for success.
Mm. Thank you. So how does leaders, or how do leaders maintain their well-being? Because you are carrying responsibility of leadership. How do you also maintain your well-being to make sure that you are also safe, your mental health is okay for you to be able to deliver your leadership duties?
That's really important. That's really important, Ade. And I think in some communities we don't talk about mental health enough, and we spend so much time working, right? Like, if you work even a normal 9 to 5 job, you're spending 8 hours at work, right? So one of the biggest things is nobody is indispensable. I know that it's hard to believe. Like, some of us have really, really important jobs, really significant jobs, and you're moving mountains in your work, but nobody's indispensable, right? I think recognizing that is both humbling, but it's also very liberating. So because I know that I'm not indispensable, I can do my best, I can give my best work, I'm also going to set appropriate boundaries, take time to rest, take time to connect with the things that give me energy. Now, some people, they are very good at, I'm going to work hard for 1 year and then I'm going to go for a good vacation. So some people are like that. But most people, you actually have to manage your energy week to week, even day to, so there's some people who maybe they're working remotely or even they're working in the office. Maybe at lunchtime they go for a walk, they go for a run. If you need that to maintain your daily energy, try and protect that time, because the work can always expand to fill the time. Same
Yeah.
thing, you work from home, you have your computer with you all the time. If you have children and you get energy from your children, the children get energy from you. Protect that family time. And I don't like to preach to people, say, oh, you're not setting the right boundaries. Everybody's life is different. Everybody's family is
Yeah.
different. Some people, it's a consistent time every day. This is the time for my children. Some other people, they say, okay, I'm going to spend 2 hours with my children somewhere in the day. It might not be the same time because your time goes on, but just remember that part of your responsibility, especially as a leader, you're motivating people, you're setting conditions for them to be successful. You also want to maintain the appropriate boundaries that allow you to be successful. So, whatever it is you need to do to look after your well being, rest, recharge, energize, proper nutrition. It might seem obvious, but some of us that work, you see us eating lunch at the desk, we put the thing away. Sometimes
Yeah.
we've forgotten that we haven't eaten for the day. So, hydration, I think those things are really important and it's part of the job. So don't think of it as an extra thing over here. It's part of the job for long term success.
Mm, I really like that. So overall well-being, not just focusing on your work, you also need to focus on yourself. You need to see yourself as I was reading an article and you were saying that the way you schedule your meeting
That's
on
right.
your calendar, you can also schedule your rest on
That's
your
right.
calendar so that you will really devote. Because sometimes we might say, oh, I'm going to take a break in the next 1 hour, and you are just working, you don't even know that it's already 3 hours. So the way you set your meeting, you can also set your rest so that you get that notification that it's time to take a walk, it's time to rest. Yeah. So, what will you tell your younger self? What is one piece of advice you would tell your younger self before you step into the leadership role?
It's a really good question, So I'll tell my younger self that it's gonna be okay, right? Because life is a journey, the career is a journey, and it unfolds, right? So some people they know from when they were 5 years old, this is what I want to be, and somehow it panned out that way. But for me, when I started my career, I didn't know that I would spend so much of my time focused on leadership and so on. But as I was getting different experiences, when I was in the middle of those experiences, I didn't actually know how all of those things would fit together. It's like I told you, I studied mechanical engineering over here. I did petroleum over here. When I was in this gray zone, when I was chief of staff, I decided to take an MBA. I said, okay, maybe this will give me something to hold on to because I didn't even have the words to describe the kind of experience that I was getting. But then now, many years later, all of that experience is coming together. So when I'm working with people who are maybe a biologist, a technologist, an engineer, an accountant who are moving into leadership and I'm supporting them in that journey. Now it all makes sense. So those are the things that I would say to my younger self is just take it all in. No knowledge is wasted. I know that's a saying people say, but it comes in, especially the way the world is changing so fast. Each and every one of us has multiple careers. It's not like maybe in our parents or our grandparents' time where you work for a company for 40 years, then you retire and they pay you your pension. Like all of us are touching different things. So I'll just say to myself, take it all in, absorb, stop to smell the roses, take all these experiences in, and it will pan out in the end.
Hmm, that's a great advice. Thank you for sharing that with us. So tell us about your leadership coaching program and the multicultural leadership diagnostic tool that you have. I know you do a lot of leadership programs. Tell us a little bit about it.
That's right. So I developed a multicultural leadership tool that it's a free tool that I can share with anyone who is interested. It just helps to assess your leadership across 5 dimensions. So those dimensions are how you give feedback, how you communicate, how you interact with multiculturalism, your self awareness. So, what that does is it helps to assess where you may be able to get some kind of support, where you need to focus a little bit more. The last thing is how you delegate and how you achieve things through your team. So that's what the diagnostic itself is all about. It brings together a lot of my experience around supporting leaders with feedback, with delegation, with communication, and with working multiculturally. Now, the way that I work with leaders, I typically work with individual leaders. In organizations who have made that step from I'm a specialist. It doesn't matter what kind of specialization it is. I'm leading people. Sometimes it's people moving into formal leadership roles, or it's people who find themselves maybe I'm a project manager who the people don't all report to me, but I need to get them to align around a specific goal. So I have programs that I customize, but my standard program is often over a 3 month period, and we have like 6 sessions, and I'm basically supporting you in real time with real leadership challenges. I find that you can attend a leadership development course and you can learn some concepts about leadership. But
Yeah.
we, when we're going through a high stress moment or when we're feeling that imposter syndrome, it's helpful to have a thought partner that can actually work with you through each of those things. And then if there are patterns that you default to, if there are habits that you fall back to when you're stressed or when you're tired or when you're exhausted or when you're nervous, you can have someone challenge you, and then you can experiment with something and see success as you move forward. So that's where I've found leadership coaching particularly helpful, is someone who is going with you in real time and say, hey Alex, I have this difficult conversation tomorrow. Here are the things that are at stake. And we can say, okay, what are you going to experiment with? What have you been successful with? And then I usually see really good success with people that way.
Yeah. I really like that. So, like accountability partner holding you along the way as you navigate that journey.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
Yeah, that is it. How can our listeners connect with you if they want to, if they're interested in your program or just want to chat with you? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, so two main ways. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So Alex Namonu on LinkedIn, you'll find me there. And then on my website as well. So transformorgleaders.org. You can find me on either of those two platforms.
All right, thank you. I'm going to put the link to the description of this video so that they can easily click on those links and join. So I think that will be the end of our discussion today. Thank you so very much. I've learned a lot listening and hearing from you. Thanks so much for joining today. And for our listeners, thank you for listening. Remember to like, share, and comment to say things that stood out for you in the episode. Alex, do you have any final words?
I just want to say thank you, and I want to encourage people. I know the economy right now is rough, a lot of things happening in the world, but just stay focused, look after yourselves. Thank you. It's been great to be here.
All right. Thank you so much.